Hi, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. So I thought you might enjoy a tutorial on how to actually bind Cuddle, because it's a little bit different and it's super easy, and I just wanted to show you. So the first thing you're going to do when you get your top and your bottom together, you're going to go ahead and you're going to trim them up so they match. So you're trimming them nice and even. And I've got the other three sides trimmed, so I just left this one side to show you. We've already sprayed them with adhesive so that they stick together. And we're going to go ahead and trim these up. There we go. Let me push this out. All right, it looks like this end needs to be trimmed up just a little bit as well. Let's see here. I'm actually going to fold this, I think, and match these edges up here with my edges there and make sure it's nice and square. So what I'm doing right here is I'm lining up these two chevrons where they come together to make sure this is nice and square. And then I'm just going to trim this bottom edge right here. And again, Cuddle is the most forgiving cloth ever. It just really is forgiving. All right, now here's one of the difference when you go to bind Cuddle. Here's our little strip for binding. And you're only going to cut these 1.25 inches because we don't really turn them under. So let me just look at my directions and make sure that's right, 1.25 inches. No, good thing I read that, 1.75 inches. So 1.75 inches, and I'm going to lay my ruler right on here in the 1.75 inch line, and I'm going to cut my strips. And we're going to do this just like normal binding. So 1.75 inches, scooch this over right here. There we go. 1.75 inches. You know, I'd much rather, what do they say? Measure twice, cut once, or check twice. Don't cut till you've checked twice, whatever that is. So 1.75 inches. And then 1.75 inches, and we're gonna we probably only need these. It's so funny what a little bit of fabric this is. You know, when you think about binding, you think about a much bigger piece, but 1.75 inches. And it looks like we have 1.75 inches left. So now we're gonna sew our binding end to end. We're gonna take our piece, and we're gonna do what we call the plus method, like this. And we're gonna lay it on here like this, and we're gonna sew it from left to right. And then when we're going to trim that, and when it folds back, it'll be like this, so that it takes care of all that bulk that's in that seam. So we're going to go ahead and do that with all of our strips. So come join me at the sewing machine. Here we go. And we are going to go back to our regular stitch. Here we go. Oops. Now I'm just going to add another one on there. And again, I like to bring the piece in from the side and bring the piece up from my lap and sew from the left to the right. Go straight across. All right, now we're just going to trim these pieces off here. And then what we're going to do is we are going to sew this on the top of our blanket. We're going to lay it, we're going to start down a few inches like this, and we're just going to lay it right on the top. We're going to leave a little bit of a tail right here. And we're going to sew it on the top like this. Okay? Not folding anything under, just leaving it right on the top, just like that. Now when you're putting your binding on, make sure you put right sides together. Watch your nap to make sure your nap's gone together in the same direction. And I look a little bit like I'm pulling on this, but I'm really not pulling on it. I'm just kind of holding it out there so it keeps it kind of level. So one of the things that they did on their binding that's different than how we usually bind a normal quilt is that they've sewn in a 1/2 inch all the way around, and it gives it this wider look. So that's kind of fun. All right, so let me talk you through this corner. Normally when we put on a regular binding, we're sewing it at a quarter of an inch, and we have our sides folded under. This, we don't even need to sew the edge down, so we're sewing a 1/2 inch all the way down. We stop a 1/2 inch from the corner, we flip this back, and we're going to sew straight down the side. Now you can see right here, there's a little bit of my back sticking out. It has slipped a little bit. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to use the top piece as our line, and we're going to go along there. The fun thing about the 1/2 inch is that it really helps when you're using this fabric that's a little bit more slickery, and it slides around a little bit. It helps because you have a little bit more room to work with, and it's going to give you this fun, fatter edge. So I'm going to go ahead and start at this corner and sew down, and then we're ready to end our binding, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's go sew this corner down. And then we'll head over here to the sewing machine. We're going to sew down the corner. There we go. All right, now really what I'm doing is just kind of making sure this corner is sewn down because my end strips are ready to put together. So then what we're going to do is we're going to lay this up, and again it's just the plus method. So when you finish your binding like this, what you're going to do is you're going to lay it together, and you'll have this long piece, and you're going to lay them over, and you're just going to, however wide they are, that's how far you overlap them. So mine is 1 3/4 inches wide, so I'm going to overlap mine 1 3/4 inches from the edge. See, here's the other one right here. And so I'm going to use that as an edge, and I'm going to see that I need to cut off about a 1/2 inch right here, which, oh, here's my scissors. And because you want it to overlap, however wide it is, that's how far you want it to overlap. So let me take a look at this again, make sure. So that's one. Yes, I actually have mine over 2, but that's because when I put mine together like this, you put them right sides together, and I like to leave a little piece sticking out, so I make room for that in my figuring. So now we're going to sew. We're going to take this over to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch this down, and we're just going to stitch right here, and then it will lay nice and flat on here, and we'll be able to continue our 1/2 inch all across it, and it will snug it up tight. All right, so let's take this over to the sewing machine here. All right, so again, when you're joining this binding together, you're going to just use that same plus method. You're going to have your piece coming in from the side. You're going to put the piece that comes up from the bottom across the top, and you're going to sew it from the left-hand side. Got to make sure my needle's in the middle here. From the left-hand side, straight down. And then before you cut anything, you're just going to hold that and stretch it out like this. You're going to hold that and stretch it out and make sure it's going to fit that quilt. See, now it's just going to lay on there really nice. So now I know that I can trim these like that. And then I can just go over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to go a 1/2 inch all the way down here and just snug that whole thing up. On some sewing machines, you can have a needle setting that's a 1/2 inch without even having to move your measurement. You can just sew over a 1/2 inch, and I happen to have that on my sewing machine. So I'm just going to sew right down here a 1/2 inch all the way. Well, there you go. Now let's see how we attach it on the other side. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and sewn a 1/2 inch all the way around the quilt. Sewn this binding to the front a 1/2 inch. I've done all my corners, and I've connected my 2 pieces, and now we're ready to flip it over and sew it on the back. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to bring it over to the back like this, and we're just going to bring it over to our stitch line and stitch it down. Now this is a fun place where you can use some of your decorative stitching for this. I like to use that serpentine zigzag on my sewing machine, and you're going to want to start at the corner when you do this, and I'm going to find that serpentine, and I like to make mine pretty big, so let's see how big I can go on here. I like to go to about 2 and about 7. There, let's see how that works. We're going to lay our binding over to the stitch line where we attached it, and we're going to use our stitch, and we are just going to be able to sail down the sides because we've got it all anchored and on there. And this really is the fun part because now you're like a racehorse. You know you're almost there. And we're just going to go around the whole quilt like this. All right, I'm almost to the corner, so I want to show you how to do that. So normally I wouldn't take it out of my sewing machine because I like to just, keep going, but I want to show you this corner. So here's what we're going to do. We're coming along here to the corner right here, and we're just going to lay this corner right here, right over that corner. And then as we get here, I am going to have this part folded up, and then the side I'm coming down will lay over the top. And what that does is it gives a nice 45 on your corner. I don't know if you can see that. It's so furry, it just kind of hides itself. So there's your nice little 45 right here. Oh, I let go of it. And you'll be able to come along here, and you'll have this part is underneath that corner, remember. So then as you come around, you can just slide around that corner and you don't have to tuck anything in. It's already folded in. So that's how I like to do my corners. So the bottom part is folded up, the top part is folded over, and you make sure that it lines up at a nice little 45, and it just looks great. So let's go ahead and sew around that. And I'm going to try and line up that stitch again, but you know what? If it doesn't line up, it's not going to show because it's just so forgiving. So here I am at the corner, and I have that part folded under, so I didn't even have to stress about it, and I can just turn and go the next way. So once you finish your binding, you're going to end up with a small quilt that looks just like this. It's so darling. You might have a little fluff on you, but that's a small price to pay for such a darling little quilt. And we hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to bind a quilt using Cuddle cloth from the Missouri Star Quilt Company.